Good afternoon, Ms. Sugantini. My name is Nadia Isha, along with my group members, Mia Sarah and Sharon Richards. Today, we will be presenting on our article and our analysis. So the article that we chose is The Love Bomb. The Love Bomb is basically a story about a group of drug addicts who wanted to rehabilitate themselves by joining this one church for rehab, but what they thought could be a solution to their problems turns out it adds more to their problems, because it turns out this rehab, what they call enthusiastic sobriety, is actually a cult. So in this story, it shows a group of people struggling in this cult. So without wasting any time, we would move on to our analysis. So the first linguistic concept is morphology. So Mia?
So for the morphology, we will start with coinage. So for coinage, the example that I can find in the article is teens made regular use of the church in those days, playing frisbee on the grounds and popping inside to use the bathroom. Frisbee is actually a name of a brand, but nowadays people think it's a name of a game. Next is borrowing. The example that I can find from the article is others say he gets those youngsters dependent on him and PDAP in place of their former dependence on drugs and alcohol. So the borrowing words that I can find in the article is alcohol is from Arabic words called alcohol. Okay, next is compounding. So for compounding, the example that I can find in the article is the 15-year-old was sprawled out on his parents' gold bedspread watching the game, but on the list of things he cared about Led Zeppelin. So the example that I can find for compounding in this article is bedspread. We can divide it as bed and spread. Next is blending. So for blending, the example that I can find in the article is Kate declined multiple interview requests for this story. I have no desire in any way to revisit these painful times, he wrote in an email. So the answer is email. Email is actually electronic mail. Next is clipping. For clipping, the example that I can find in the article is Reader introduced the subject of that week's 60 minutes episode, the Palmer Drug Abuse Program. So for clipping, I can find introduce. Introduce can be shortened as intro. So for back formation, the example that I found in the article is when Reader questioned him about his 100,000 annual income, a combination of his PDAP salary and payments from a company that ran hospitals where PDAP referred teenagers for inpatient treatment behind ring. For the answer, I can find two answers. It is payments and treatment. Payment and treatment is originally pay and treat. So for conversion, the example that I found in the article is press for evidence of the high success rate PDAP touted in its advertisement. So the example that I can find is high success. So for acronyms, the example that I can find in acronym is the segment was in no uncertain terms a takedown. It aired on the highest rated news program in the country directly after the biggest event on TV. So for acronyms, it is TV. TV is actually television. So for morphological description, the example that I found in the article is Cherry literally sang on his way into work. So I broke down the sentences into morphological description. Cherry is lexical, literal is lexical, Lee is derivational, sang is lexical, on is functional, his is lexical, way is lexical, into is functional, work is lexical. So let's move on to syntax.
On syntax, basically what I found for the first that I found is surface structure. So the example that I found is here we have a two sentences that we mix, and we want to detect whether the sentence is active sentence or they are surface structure sentence. So here is the example that I have. First sentence, Lenny Murphy watched her best friend die. So this sentence is active sentence. And the second one, Dave Larson found Cherry online and called him. So this one also active sentence. So here both the sentence above is one surface structure because they are both active sentence. So and then move to the deep structure. Also the same, just like surface structure, where we have to find two sentences and trace whether they have a different meanings and they have deep structure on both sentence. So here's my example. Sentence number one would be, sometime Mehan took to the piano leading sing along. Sentence number two, Mehan didn't have formal qualification to run a drug treatment program. So here, both the sentence above are different meaning, hence the structures above are two deep structures. All right, and then move to structural ambiguity. I found an example where this one means one sentence. A structural ambiguity means a sentence that have two meanings in a sentence. So I found that one example, which is the Han let him dig into the desert. Sorry. So the answer is whether he end up alone or at the worst state of mind. So this is the example that I found in an article about structural ambiguity. And move to the tree diagram. So the example of tree diagram, his all fault barely work. So these are the example that I created based on the sentence itself.
Okay, so this is my part for semantics. The first element is conceptual versus associative meaning. So the first sentence is Mihan was singularly charismatic, a perpetual motion, machine with a comic timing and a gift for connecting with kids. So the conceptual meaning is motion is an act of process or instance of changing place. So associative meaning is running, walking, and swaying. Conceptual is the literal definition of the word. Meanwhile, associative is what we can relate to that word. And the second conceptual meaning is a special ability to do something, which is gift. And the associative meaning is skilled, flair, and natural. Okay, so moving on to semantic features. The first example that I have is a committee chairwoman in Congress would call it one of the most disgraceful and scandalous episodes in the history of healthcare in America. So in this sentence alone, It has features such as human, animate, which is living things or moving things. Third one is female, country, and occupation. As you can see, human is from the committee chairwoman. Animate is also from the committee chairwoman. Female also the same. Occupation also the same from that one word. Okay, for semantic roles, there are 6 roles in semantics. One is agent, theme, instrument, experiencer, location, and source. So the first sentence that I could find is they use scraps of leather for rings. So the agent for this sentence is they, theme is for rings, instrument is scraps of leather. The other roles I couldn't find in this sentence. Okay, moving on to lexical relations. The first one is synonyms. Synonyms means a word that has the same meaning as the other word. So the first synonym that I found is it aired on the highest rated news program in the country directly after a big event on TV. Mihan legs were crossed and he was cradling a large stick strip of its bark. So the synonym here is big and large. It means the same thing. Okay, for gradable, gradable is an adjective that is multipliable. So there are normal adjective and extreme adjective. So normal adjective is gradable. The first, the one of the example is Cherry came across Stonebreaker books online and read the section about an angry former employer named Chris. So the gradable adjective is angry. So non-gradable is an adjective that is extreme. So the example is when she heard about Stonebreaker's behavior, Wendy Larson was furious. So the non-gradable adjective is furious. The first one, the gradable, is angry. Non-gradable is furious. Okay, moving on to reversive. Reversive is actually a noun that relates to each other, but actually means the opposite meaning. So the first example is recently the police had shown up at his house in Houston when a check for groceries bounced. When the adults balked about who was supervising their kids, Joy calmed down. So the reversive is up and down. Okay, and this is hyponymy. Hyponymy. The example is potential weapons, and the second one is own gun, which makes it hyponymy, weapons and guns. Okay, for prototypes is actually, I would say it is a classification of a word. So for example, in the first prototypes is the word furniture in this sentence, and the second one is bed. So as we know, bed is a furniture, which makes it a prototype. Okay, homophones. Homophones are words that sound similar, but the meaning and the spelling is different. So for example, this one, I have the number 4 and 4, which is the, I would say, verb. So it's 4 and 4. That is one of the easiest example of homophones. Okay, for homonyms. Homonyms is actually quite similar to homophones, but instead of them just sounding the same. Homonyms sound the same and also spell the same, but brings two or more different meanings. So for this example is check, which means monetary, the one that you use to cash in to get money. And the second one is check, which means examine. Okay, for polysami is also quite similar to the previous elements. It's just that it has an ambiguous meaning. For example, park can mean a large public garden. And the second meaning could bring a vehicle to a halt and leave it for temporary. Okay. For Metonomy, it is a word that means a completely different meaning. Is just used as a shortening of a word, or it is a significance. So for example, Hollywood is a place in the United States of America, but in this sentence, Hollywood is used as cinema in the United States of America, which means it is what they call film in America. Okay, for the final element in semantics is collocation. So collocation is when there are two words that can combine into one. So for example, the first one is they may have been other information the family wished to keep private. So the second one is colleagues went silent when he entered the room. So the collocation is keep silent. We can use keep silent in a sentence. So that is it for my part.
Okay. So let's move to pragmatic. In pragmatic, we have 6 components, which is visible meaning, inference, reference, anaphora, and antecedents, direct and indirect speech act, and disease. So let's move to the invisible meaning. So basically, invisible meaning, we recognize what is the mean without actually being said. So here's the example that I have in invisible meaning. Mihan appeared on screen looking like someone's hazy misconception of 1970s cool white sideburns, bushy blonde goat. So here I take the bushy blonde goat, where it's referred that Mihan have a big blonde beard. So let's move to inference. So inference is additional information used by right to connect what is said and what is meant. So here are the example that I have here. Mihan couldn't offer the struggling ES program any money. The cutter deal would only be enough to cover his work. But as the source of all ES teachings, he could offer unparalleled guidance, and maybe that would be enough to save the program from collapse. So basically here, the cutter is actually a company. And let's move to reference. Okay. Reference is detailed information given. So here's the example that I have.
Jap. Alamak, kena save dulu bodoh ni. Banyak siut. Make new folder. Apa subjek ni? ELS. Okay dah. Stop balik.
Alright. Okay, let's move to reference. Reference is detailed information that are given in a sentence, where to explain more on the sentence. So here are the example. According to Cherry, Kate summoned him to a hotel room at the annual crossroad bequeathed in 1987. So the reference is in 1987. All right, let's move to anaphora and antecedent. So here's the example that I have for anaphora and antecedents. Okay. Increasingly, members of the family were interested in New Age mysticism, and the Larsens had returned from the trip with a pack of medicine cards. So antecedents is member of the family and anaphora is there. And let's next move to direct and indirect speech act. So I'll explain on, I'll give the example for direct speech act first. So the example is, she couldn't talk, she couldn't clean herself, Guinness said. So it's direct said that this person cannot talk and couldn't do anything by herself. An indirect example here, one night he got a call from a friend's mother, John been sick, he said. Here, even in the sentence itself, it doesn't state whether John is really sick, or it's either John were just back to his bad habit where taking this drug. Now move to the disease. So in disease, they have three parts, which is person, place, and time. So I just give one example for person disease. The example is, there are some things that people want to say to you, he told Cherry. And here, the disease is you. And for the place, a couple of people went outside to investigate the situation and the police were called. And the answer is outside. And for the time, this is the example I can give is, the pain you're feeling now, that's real, Mihan said. So the answer for time disease is now. So I can move to the next part.
So for the discourse analysis, there are 5 parts, which is cooperative principle, background knowledge, script, cohesion, and speech act. So for cooperative principle, the example that I can find in the article is this one. Now I'm saying this program works for a group of people. If it doesn't work for you, try another one. Mihan told 60 minutes. We're not controlling you in any way, shape, or form. You don't like it, leave. So for this sentence, the cooperative principle is quality. Next is for the background knowledge. I will start with schema. So for schema, the example that I found in the article is, a hospital administrator interviewed for this story described him as a poor guy. So the schema I can find is the hospital. Hospital is an institute providing medical and surgical treatment. Next is script. So for script, the example that I found is, the gatherings were presided over by Father Charles Wyatt Brown, a soft-spoken priest beloved by his community. Wyatt Brown took a liking to Meehan, who was outspoken in meetings. The two began having lunch together. So the script that I found in this sentence is, first, he visited a church. Secondly, he met a priest and they had lunch together. So for cohesion, first is, 2 weeks after freeway was dissolved, Mihan started a new ES program called Good Company. City licensing official learned about it when a reporter called them with questions, prompting yet another investigation. So the answer is the sentence refer the city licensing officials learned that Mihan has started a new company because they knew a reporter called them. So for the last part for discourse analysis, it is speech art and it is speech act. So for the last part for discourse analysis, it is speech act. The example that I found in the article is, we all work for next to nothing. A counselor from the early days said, we were in love for the love of the job. So that's all for our presentation. Thank you so much for your time.